Just give us a quick opening statement on you coming back to Kentucky.
Yeah, appreciate you guys all making this here and just being a part of the Kentucky culture again. Just coming back to a place that truly didn't really want to leave at the time. It was one of those decisions as a family that we felt as though we kind of had to take, coming from a Super Bowl team and doing a lot of the things that they had success with, and me obviously being there prior. But we truly did not want to leave Lexington, and the opportunity to come back and coach for Coach Stoops and be around these players and have an impact in, young people's lives was ultimately, the decision to come back and do this at a high level, and couldn't be more thankful.
Okay, we'll start questions first with Nick Roush from KSR.
I don't hear him.
Sorry, had two mutes. A lot of the players that are on the roster now, you might not have worked with, but you played a role in getting here. How much have you been able to assess them so far, and what do you think the offense will look like? Maybe different now than it was in 2021.
Yeah, what's up, Nick? It's was able to watch from afar a little bit this year. When they were on TV, I was able to watch and catch some of the games, and then over the last few days, I've been really watching the game films. The film that we get as coaches from here. So excited about some of the young talent. Excited about some of the guys that are deciding to come back, and Brendan Bates and Horsey and some of those guys that are veterans that do know maybe my style of coaching, the philosophy, the standards. Those are all things that are nice to be able to have maybe a younger group of new faces and fresh kind of guys that you can truly look at and evaluate, whereas you do know you have some of these guys that are coming back that can help sort of blend, if you will, teaching and preaching the standard and what we're trying to get accomplished. So haven't had a ton of time to truly dive into each player as much as I'd like to, but I do feel as though there's enough guys on the offensive side of the ball that I do have familiarity with, that ultimately the personnel decisions can be expedited in some of those conversations when I do get there.
Okay, we'll go with Larry Vaught.
Hey, Liam, two things for you. One, how did the recruits and the players that have committed to Kentucky in the last month keep it quiet when they knew since early December that you were going to come back? What did you do, or who did to make sure that stayed so quiet? And then what it's going to be like for you? I think you're going to have a whole lot of new coaches that you didn't work with before. What's that going to be like?
Yeah, Larry, how you doing, man? So I think ultimately when you're in these kind of situations, and the familiarity, I guess, if you will, not only with me being the common kind of entity here with Coach Stoops in Kentucky and Sean, they also, between the dialogue of the first time around and then Sean bringing me back into now this conversation, there was a lot of mutual respect there between Coach Stoops and Coach McVay. So I think that was something that was honored just based on our discussions and communication. That's really at the end of the day how you'd like to do business. You want to be able to do some of these things that are difficult decisions, difficult for a lot of people, but also exciting at the same time. And that was something that I think was pretty easily done just throughout the guys that we were, that I've worked for. Both of these guys, ton of respect, and they also had a lot of respect for each other. And then secondly, it's exciting to come back and be a part of this thing, to be honest. And really the way that it's going to look offensively, it's not going to be the same. The core foundation beliefs, the standards at which we want to operate with on a day-to-day basis, those will be the same. And the coaching staff that was there to help bridge the gap, kind of like what I mentioned with Nick, some of the older offensive players that are coming back. Well, a lot of those guys can help bridge the gap in terms of the communication. And we'll meet as soon as I get there on Monday. not of this upcoming week, after that, we'll start meeting, as an offensive staff. And I think that there's enough continuity and communication that we can, have that will exist to ultimately all get on the same page with plenty enough time going into spring practice.
Okay, next up, John Hale with the Lexington Herald.
Liam, how are you different after this year in Los Angeles? What's different about you as a coordinator versus the last time?
Well, it's a good question. I've been thinking about that quite a bit, and the plays, the scheme, the all that stuff is everybody has for the most part, right? Well, when you lose players, you have to pivot. And we had some really unfortunate things happen, both, personnel wise, schematically, things like that here in LA this past year. It was not our prototypical year on offense, and also as a team. That's adversity that's extremely real. That doesn't just happen on Sundays. Like, this was a week in and week out, really tough year, in order to try to mix and match. Well, who's going to play O-line this week? We don't even know who's going to be able to practice. We didn't know, you scheme up all these great plays, but at the end of the day, it truly is about the players. And having to pivot and adjust to the type of players that we had, we were playing with throughout the season. They weren't our starters. They didn't know all of our offensive scheme from, A to Z. So we needed to pivot at times. Now, was it always successful? No. Was the end result always what we were looking for? No, but it was about the process. The process was clean every week. And at the end of the day, that's really all you can hope for in terms of trying to create an environment and a standard to which these guys came to practice and meetings every single day with the right enthusiasm, right mindset, because the culture was strong. Because everything we tried to do on the week-to-week basis was about leading, confidence. How can we just try to give these guys our best effort as coaches each week? Because we knew we were going to get their best effort on Sundays. And the results weren't always clean or what we wanted. But I think when you go through some of these things, it gives you the perspective that it's truly always about the players. And, when you have great ones, usually good things happen. When you have injuries, typically, great things don't happen, but we were able to pivot and somewhat evaluate week to week how we were going to move the football. And that wasn't always what we wanted, but you got me
Okay,
there.
yeah,
I think
we're back, we're
I think I got muted, but
Okay, you got it.
I hope that, does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, you're good.
Cool.
Okay, next up, Dylan Ballard with the Sea of Blue.
Hey, Liam, you said a second ago that you hadn't got to talk with a ton of the new players or watch their film. If you have got to look on Devin Leary's film, you got a lot out of Will Levis transferring in. What do you think that in your offense and in this flow of offense at Kentucky that you can bring out of Leary's skill set? And a second part of that, how do you feel like two guys you recruited, Berrien and Dane, will help with those things?
Yeah, Devin's a guy that, from South Jersey, I've familiarity with a couple players that, he's in that same area growing up, in high school, coming up. I know the type of kid that he is. And he can throw the football very naturally, different than Will, like you had mentioned, where, each season, each offense, it's always going to be tweaked a little bit, right? The way that the Los Angeles Rams operated in 2021 was extremely different than the way we operated in 2020 with Jared Goff versus Matthew Stafford. So the quarterback does kind of, depend on a lot of the things that you're going to do schematically. I do believe that this guy can throw the football as good as anybody in the country. And he wanted to come to Kentucky and obviously to win football games and have an opportunity to win an SEC championship, but also to be developed, into a future NFL quarterback. And he knows that he needs to jump under center a little bit and do some of the things that he hasn't done in his career yet up to this point in order to have some more comfort going into play at the highest level of football. So I think we're all on the same page in terms of that dialogue. what we're trying to get accomplished in terms of his development and how that can relate to the other players on the offensive side of the ball. But a lot of this is going to be about Devin and what he's comfortable with. It's his last year of football. And I'd be crazy to walk in there and say, this is what you're doing it. This is how you're doing it. When maybe he's completely uncomfortable doing some of those things. So I do believe it's going to be a collaboration, some of the things that he was successful with in his past, but also some of the things that we know we need to do in order to operate in the SEC. And then, yeah, the receivers, some of the young talent. I think about Ramon Jefferson. I recruited him coming out of Maine, coming out of high school. So there are some familiarity with some of these guys that have been able to be in contact with and have a prior relationship with, which helps. It just helps knowing their skill set a little bit, maybe what makes them tick. How do they get them to practice harder? How do we get them to play harder? How do we get them to do things, that aren't just surface area, surface level of the game of football, and trying to be a little bit more relationship driven, understand these guys, but couldn't be more excited to work with some of those young talented dudes that we can get after a little bit and see what they're worth,
John Clay.
And first of all, welcome back. Let me go back a little bit with Will Levis. Obviously, this year, he had his ups and downs, played through injuries. I'm sure NFL scouts are going to ask you, or personnel going to ask you about Will. What would you tell them about Will as an NFL prospect?
His best football, I think, is still ahead of him. I truly believe that Will have a long, successful NFL career. And the guy's played through multiple different coordinators in multiple different years, obviously battled through a ton of injuries, as you mentioned, struggled to protect them a little bit last year. This guy is going to wow them in every shape, every form and fashion. I mean, he's extremely talented throwing the football, but you get him in a room, you get around him, you can feel his confidence. He'll be able to speak the language, and he'll be able to come into a locker room and get along with the guys. But really excited about Will's future. Haven't had anybody reach out to me as of yet. I know that process is just kind of starting, but I'm really excited to see how this thing plays out for him over the next few months. And any help that I can be for him and to those guys, I'm definitely available.
Okay, we'll go with Aaron Gershon and then Howard Herman.
Hey, Liam. So when you weren't here this past year, obviously the offensive line had their struggles. From what you've seen so far, just how important is it to get that unit back on track? And when you were here, what were your impressions of guys like Jagger, who played a lot this past year, and getting Kenneth back?
That's the number one priority, when we get there, is diving into that position group, both personnel wise, schematically, fundamentally, technique, attitude, demeanor, all of that it needs to get dove into really quickly when we get there, because I do remember the first time that I came, that was kind of the unit that I never really worried about. I never really worried about if they were going to come to play. I never worried about 3rd and 1 not getting a first down. It was never something that crossed my mind when I got there. And we had experience now. It was different. We had 3 players on that, offensive line that went on to play in the National Football League. So one's obviously starting. So, those things are different. There's a different, set of experience, different personalities in that room. But I do, Jagger was starting to come on. I remember at the time we were excited about his development. Horsey, with the flexibility that he's been able to show, playing multiple different positions and having a ton of game experience. So, but it's a room, it's a unit that we need to address quickly when we get there, because, really the offensive line, if you think about it, that's a third of your, more than a third of your, your unit on a play-to-play basis. And if those 5 aren't on the same page, don't have the right mentality, or aren't, doing what they're supposed to do, it's really hard to have success as an offense, no matter who's around them. So that is, it's an exciting challenge, but it's definitely a challenge that we need to get after.
Howard, you're up.
Hey, Liam, have you had a chance to talk to Coach Brown at all during the fall? And second of all, now that you're back at Kentucky, do you consider yourself a college football guy?
Howard, what's going on, man? I'm cool to see you on here, dude. I wasn't able to talk to Coach Brown too much. We sent each other a few texts back and forth, just offering support and just kind of chopping it up a little bit. I got inducted in September to the Hall of Fame there. So I was able to be in contact with those guys a little bit earlier on in the season, watch the video that he played for, he ended up doing an interview for me, which was extremely touching and just a unbelievable person. So haven't been able to talk to old Coach Brown as much as I would have liked throughout this season. And am I a college coach? Am I an NFL? That's a great question. I don't think either, to be honest. I can say for sure that I think a big part of coming here this second time around was you take jobs ultimately. I mean, this was an unbelievable opportunity. I don't think any of you guys or a lot of people would disagree with that. But then you get into it and shoot, I'm working with Matthew Stafford. I mean, Matthew Stafford is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. You're working with these guys and you realize pretty quickly they don't need you, but really to help them schematically and help them continue to grow from a football standpoint. I'm very close with Matthew. He's a good friend of mine now to this point, and I respect that a lot. But you miss, both my parents were teachers. My dad was a Division III head football coach. You start to miss the impact that you might have on these guys' lives a little bit. Coming in, hey coach, I'm having an issue at home. Can we talk? Hey coach, my girlfriend dumped me. I need some advice. Those are conversations that I kind of missed. I missed helping when it was a little bit more than football. We missed as a family having players over for dinner and having the guys around. I have a 1-year-old son now that I'm excited for him to be around the football facility and be around our players to be impacted by them. That's truly what what we missed. But to say that I'll never go back to the NFL at some point in my career, I can't say that. This is the pinnacle of our profession. And to be choosing to leave is a difficult one to wrap your head around at times. But really, really thankful and think that this is the right path.
Okay, back to you, Nick.
One of your jobs is going to be recruiting a high school quarterback. And I'm sure some other schools will say, well, he left Kentucky after 1 year. What's to say he's not going to leave again? What do you say to those critics who might be skeptical that you're going to stick around this time?
Yeah, I think when you take the job last year, right, coming off of the Super Bowl, I was an assistant quarterbacks coach the last time I was there. The opportunity and the jump that I was ultimately taking to go back there is not really normal. And an opportunity that you're like, man, I don't know if this is ever going to come up again. I looked at it as a once in a lifetime opportunity at the time. You go through it, take the wins and losses out of it. I just want to kind of go somewhere, make a real impact, and plant some roots a little bit, be somewhere for a few years at least that you feel really good about. My family, the situation, my dad didn't come out to California all that much. So to have him around, around me personally, I know is good for me in my life. To be around my son, just to be closer to people that care about you, that's important for your day-to-day growth and health. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about being back in Lexington, a place that I walked around town and only got support. Now I know we won, but only heard people, hey coach, man, good luck this year. Hope you're doing well. That's cool. That's fun to be a part of. And there's a lot about the SEC and about college football that I missed. And I'm not in a rush to go anywhere. I want to go try to make an impact and be around somewhere for a little while.
Larry Vaught.
Yeah, Liam, two things. Wondered when you were thinking about coming back, what role did your wife play in this? What kind of conversations? I mean, most of us that are married, we do what our wives tell us. So how did that kind of play out for you? And then the reception that you've had and the reaction from UK fans just since it's been announced, was it everything you thought, or maybe even a little bit better?
Yeah, that was Ashley and I, at length. I think anybody that knows my wife, she definitely runs the show. But I think she's an extremely smart and intelligent businesswoman, a lot more successful when we met than I was at the time. So everything in terms of this process we spoke about and had a lot of, difficult conversations about. And we just kind of always kept coming back to just Kentucky. Like anytime it would be, all right, discussion about here or maybe other places that could, possibly come up. We just kind of always came back to Kentucky. She was pregnant last time we were there, and then we had our son a week before the season. So she really wasn't able to dive into Lexington or the people as much as I was able to. She has a lot of friends out here that she's leaving, and that's not easy. Her mom lives in Vegas. So there's a lot of things that may not be as easy for her, but she's really excited. I mean, she really wanted to come back to college. A big part of this was about her and her desire to have an impact on kids' lives as well. The recruiting piece, to be able to meet the parents and be a part of that was really important for our relationship and marriage to be able to come back into.
John Hale.
Liam, about that high school quarterback recruiting, it's been 2 cycles in a row now. Kentucky's got to transfer a quarterback. Is that okay as a model moving forward, or do you have to solve that high school quarterback recruiting piece of it eventually?
I think eventually you want to try to get, do that, but I mean, depending on how Devin this thing goes, I mean, not sure that we'd be having this discussion if Will Levis wasn't our starting quarterback, last few years. And if I would have just gone with a high school kid, we wouldn't be in this situation. So, I think eventually you'd like to be able to get somebody that you can start for a few years. But with the way that this thing's going with the portal, especially at the quarterback position, I mean, how many Mac Joneses are there anymore? How many times is that really going to happen with a guy that's just going to buy his time, sit behind some guys, compete for the job, might not win it the first time around, but then the second and third time around, he ends up winning the job. He's a 2-year starter or something like that. I just don't know how realistic that is in the landscape of college football anymore. You got to believe that if you don't win the job for your first 2 years, a lot of these guys are probably going to take off, and that's their own, to each his own. But I don't think that you need to force it. And a lot of the times you look at the way that these things are working out. If you do your job and you do a nice job recruiting, and they're not pleased with the situation, well, they're going to leave. So I don't really feel like you have to fix it immediately. Do I believe that that's something we're going to, attend to? Absolutely do.
Jeff Drummond.
Yeah, Liam, welcome back.
Thank you, Jeff.
That's not a great welcome.
It's all good, dude.
I'm watching you on one Zoom and listening on another. Something
It's all good.
crazy's going on here. So I hope you can hear this all right.
Yeah, I got you.
I wanted to ask about the wide receiver room and kind of about Tavion Robinson too, who I can't remember the exact timeline, but I think that he was coming here before you left to take the job, and just kind of what you saw from him previously and kind of how he fits into a kind of deep and talented group of guys that you'll have in that room.
Yeah, I think the room is going to be filled with competition. That's for sure. Tavion, was coming in when I was leaving really the first time around. And, I know that we were excited about some of the things that he was going to be able to do out of the slot and in the return game. I know that it was probably not exactly the year he was, hoping to have. But I believe having him back and being able to get somebody that's played a lot of football and have a lot of experience is great to have. It's great to be able to have competition in that room. Excited about DeKel Crowdis, excited about some of these younger guys that we can also look at and evaluate that isn't just, Barryon and Dane. We need to continue to get better in that room. And that speaks to the guys that are there and recruiting. And we need to continue to recruit that room at a high level to be able to play, at the level that we'd like to be able to play. I think Tavion, just like a lot of these guys, is going to be ready to compete, ready to earn a job, ready to win a job. And I'm excited to work with him.
Aaron?
Yeah, Liam, back on the offensive line for a second. I forget if the timeline with Coach Yenzer and when he was hired before you left or not, but what is your relationship, if there was one before, with him, and just your impressions of his coaching style?
Yeah, we definitely know each other a little bit from the previous time, and have been able to speak to him a little bit over the last few weeks. But really like Jens as a dude. I think he's the type of person that will work well together. He's a little bit different, obviously, than Wolf, a little bit less probably, in terms of some of the, just demeanor wise. And I love Wolf. So Jens and I think will blend pretty well together, and, excited about learning from him, listening to him in terms of how he's teaching some things. And then for us to get on the same page about how ultimately we'd like it to be done. I think we'd all agree that we need to be able to run the football better and protect the quarterback better. So those are the two things that we're going to get together and talk about, and be able to kind of figure this thing out. But all the guys on staff said he's a really good dude. My conversations and dialogue with him have said this, have been nothing but the same. So excited. I think he's the type of guy that's going to put his head down and work, knows that there needs to be improvements made. And I'm excited about doing that with him.
All right, let's do these last three, Liam, if you're cool with that. And let's start with Howard.
Okay, I'm going to ask it this way. Does your move back to Kentucky have any impact on what Sean McVay is thinking?
No, we had these discussions. I mean, obviously you guys know that I signed a contract a little while ago. So no, this was truly about, when you go and call plays at a high level in the SEC and then you stop calling plays. I probably missed that more than I maybe thought I was going to. There's stress, there's anxiety, there's a lot of things that goes into it, but there's no better feeling when you see guys have success and to be able to overcome things. So I really missed calling plays and truly leading. Ultimately here, there's just a cap on how much you can truly go and be yourself and lead, because, Sean runs the show for the most part. So I could not thank him more, and, for this opportunity, how much more football I probably learned within the last year. That was a huge reason for going, was I wanted to continue to learn, not just from experience of calling plays, but to grow schematically, to grow as a football coach. Feel like I've been able to do that over the past year, even though the results weren't what we were looking for, but it was not tied in at all with Sean making some of the decisions and having the conversations that he's having right now. I've been able to help him throughout some of that and be able to sounding board. He's a good friend of mine, but we were on the same page in terms of the opportunity for me to come back and do this.
Dylan?
Liam, a lot of people tab Scott Woodward as one of your guys, and he was here last year. You guys seem to be close. How have the conversations been with you and him about you coming back, and just how excited are you to work with him again and that group again and all that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Scott and I go way back. I'm proud of the way that he's recruited that room. It can continue to do so even after I've left. I'm happy with that. And I think that he's able to continue to work on the development of that room. That room is talented for sure, but there's so much meat on that bone. There's so much coaching, there's so much work to be done over the next couple months here. And I'm excited to do that with him. But really, that was a huge part as well about coming back, was just the relationships that I had on staff. A lot of these guys, we really dove into this offense and did it all together the last time. So I'm really excited about getting back to work with these guys, not just Woody, but that whole offensive staff. And the addition, obviously, of Jay Bowler and Zach Yen. So excited about getting back to work with those guys. But and I'm really happy for Woody, the way that some things have played out for him.
Okay, final question is Nick Roush.
First time we did this, Liam, you talked a lot about the marriage of the run and the pass. Well, Chris Rodriguez ain't walking through that door. So how does the formula change with a new look running back room?
Maybe a little bit more by committee. I haven't been able to truly evaluate as much that room as I would like to. I think the spring sometimes is a really good time to just really let these guys go out and kind of roll the ball out and let them go and see who's going to take it over. I mean, that's like you mentioned, C-Rod's not walking back in. We're going to roll the football out, and whoever can run and execute and gain yards and break tackles and be the guy in that room, that's who it's going to be. And then if it has to be a little bit more by committee, that's something that we'll have to do as well. But I'm excited about some of the guys in that room, but somebody needs to emerge and take it over. And that's part of coaching. That's an exciting part of competition that you get ready for. Love Chris, really was disappointed I wasn't able to coach him for, his last year. We'll definitely miss handing the football off and saying, like, I know we're going to gain 4 yards. That was not scheme. That was him a lot of the times. And so really excited about being able to see what these guys can do. And ultimately, the best player is going to go out and play regardless of year, whoever you are. The best player is going to be the running back for us.
Okay, now, Coach Coen, I see Lonnie has joined late. So we'll let Lonnie give us the last question and then we'll go. Okay, Lonnie,
Good.
Go ahead. Lonnie, can you get off mute?
No.
No. Okay, we'll get with Lonnie later then, Coach. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll have this link emailed out to everybody on this call.